I want to do some examples of operations with fractions, and I'm not going to mess around at all with the traditional method. I'm just going to use the calculator for everything. So here's the first example. Reduce to lowest terms 25 over 30. Just the old-fashioned way. There's a common factor of 5 that we would divide up, but let's let the calculator do this for us. So the first thing I'm going to do is go 25 divided by 30. And that gives me the decimal equivalent, and I can change that decimal into the fractional equivalent by hitting Math. And then the very first thing is, see that arrow to frac? So that will change this to a fraction. So if I hit enter, so answer to frac, that means it's going to take the previous answer and convert it to a fraction. Enter again, 5/6. So that's the fraction in lowest terms, 5/6. Okay, we can do the same thing for adding, multiplying, and dividing fractions. So here's another example. Say if I say add 2/3 plus 1/4. Typically, the old-fashioned way would be finding a least common denominator, expressing both of the fractions in terms of the least common denominator. But I'm just going to let the calculator do this. So I'm going to go 2/3 plus 1/4. When I hit enter, I'll get a decimal answer. And then I'm going to let that answer to frac thing convert the decimal to a fraction. If I hit math, then the first thing there is 2 frac. So if I hit enter, so this will change that decimal into its fractional equivalent in lowest terms. Enter again, 11/12. We can do the same thing for multiplying fractions. Multiply 1/5 times 10/13. The usual old way would be, well, there's a common factor between 5 and 10 that we could cancel off, multiply the tops and multiply the bottoms. I'm going to let the calculator do the whole thing for me. So this time I'm going to enter 1/5 times 10/13. This will give me some decimal, and I can convert that decimal to its fractional equivalent by going math. The first thing there is to frac, and then this will change that number into its fractional equivalent when I hit enter again, 2/13. We can do the same thing for dividing fractions. So for an example, divide 1/3 divided by 5/6. Now, if we weren't using the calculator, we would flip over the second fraction and multiply. But I'm going to let the calculator do this. The only thing is that when you do this on the calculator, because of the order of operations on the calculator, you need to put a parentheses around the 1/3 and a parentheses around the 5/6. So on the calculator, if I go 1/3, and notice I put the parentheses, divided by parentheses, 2/13, divided by 1/3 divided by 5/6, and notice I'm putting the parentheses in everywhere. And then when I hit enter, I get 0.4, which is the decimal equivalent. And then if I go math to frac, answer to frac, 2/5. So that answer to frac thing is very useful in operations with fractions.